Identifying issues and forming questions is part of the process of brainstorming your research project idea. So ignore that last slide that said Comp 1. This is actually a Comp 2 assignment. We're going to look at ways that you can start identifying the issue and form the questions. It's going to help you develop your idea that hopefully that you've gotten a general idea of where you're headed with that. So the goal in comp class is inquiry. That just means that we want you to ask questions. I tell my Comp 1 students the number one thing I want them to learn is to question everything. And the best research is when you start to think about complex critical questions you can ask. So I'm going to give you several examples of questions, but they're not the limit of the questions that you can ask. The idea is to start sort of interrogating the concepts that you're looking at researching, and asking. The more questions you ask and the better your questions, the better your results for your research. So what are the concerns of the authors I've read? And that doesn't limit it to this class. Like if you've read a book for sociology or for psychology and there was something that somebody was writing about or discussing, what are their concerns? What situations motivated them to write? And that's key because you can get a sense for, okay, they were encouraged or decided to write because of this, like Gillum and Wooden wrote because of their son's experience. What frames or context do they use to construct their argument? We'll look more at these questions here in a little bit. What is my argument in response to their writing? Sometimes we read something that really ticks us off or grates on our nerves, and we need to respond to it, right? What is the stake in the argument? If one of the things that I think is wrong with Gillum and Wooden's entire essay is they wrote this very long, detailed essay, and in the end, they're like, probably doesn't matter. Well, why? Tell us. Why make us read this whole thing to go, yeah, it's probably not ruining your son? Who will be interested in reading what I have to say? So think about, I'm interested in just about everything. Like one of my favorite things about Comp 2 is that I can read so many different and interesting ideas. But think about the people in the classroom, because they are also your audience, not just for the when they're peer reviewing your essay, but then also when you do your presentation at the end. How can I connect with both sympathetic and antagonistic readers? What kinds of evidence will persuade my readers? And what objections are they likely to raise? Knowing a devil's advocate is key to writing a good research paper because they can always find flaws in your argument. So when you read another article, the idea we tell you in Comp 1 to read like a writer. And how you do that is you ask questions of the things that you read. And so one of the things is to figure out what is the issue at hand. So it should be an idea open to dispute. An information or an informative essay is not open to a dispute, right? It just is. Understand the situation or the factors that contribute to your issue. In other words, you've provided background and context, or you can figure out background and context before ultimately formulating a question, which is the question that you intend to answer with your research. I don't want you to tell me what you're going to tell me because you need the research before you can reach a conclusion about the topic. For example, a situation might be an increasing number of homeless people are seeking shelter on the college campus. This actually happens quite frequently at the downtown campus. In fact, right now, because of not having classes meeting, the downtown campus is closed for the summer. Issue: campus security has stepped up its efforts to remove the homeless, even though the shelters off campus are overcrowded, which is almost always true as far as homeless shelters. So then your question might be, how can you persuade the school to shelter the homeless and to provide funds to support the needs of the homeless in our community? I can tell you right now it's not going to happen, but that's how you narrow down your ideas. Is this is a situation, here's the bigger issue, here's my question. And then the question is, so then you would bring up statistics and research and anything that might support your idea that homeless should be sheltered on campus. Not going to happen. We don't have the facilities anyways. But you can see how you can develop your ideas from situation to issue to question. You can draw from personal experience in the same way that Gilliam and Wooden discuss their son. Sometimes if you think about questions that are asked of you, I know my kids have been asking me a lot of questions about civics related things, about issues of politics because of everything that's going on with COVID, and they see different governors with different responses to it. And so they're asking me these kinds of questions, which might lead to a research paper. In the academic setting, you can use personal experience to argue a point, to illustrate something, or to illuminate a connection between theories or sources. Their story that you give should strengthen your argument, help to make the connections for the reader. Using personal testimony can augment and put a face on the research that you cite. However, here's the big caveat. You may not use I anywhere else in the paper. When it is your personal experience, you can use personal pronouns because you are the source of the information, but the rest of the time, personal pronouns should be avoided in formal academic writing. When you have an issue that you want to talk about, the first thing you want to do is figure out what is open to dispute. In other words, what questions can be asked. Some things are just a cold, hard fact. COVID-19 is a virus that is now a pandemic across the globe. That's a fact. That is not open to dispute, unless you're a science denier, but that's a whole different topic, and you can deal with that in your science classes. What I want you to do is identify something that's open to dispute, such as what is the fatality rate of COVID? What does mask wearing do for us? And then you can go search out those facts, although we had somebody providing facts in class last time. What is open to dispute? And then is there tension between two or more points of view? In Education in the Disinformation Age, she talks about using, she or he, I can't remember which it was, talks about using modern conventions like hyperlinks, and yet in the article Is Google Making Us Stupid, he says that hyperlinks distract us and cause shortened attention span. And so there's tension between 2 points of view. That might be something that you want to pursue. Resist binary thinking. Binary thinking is this or that. So it's either wear a mask or don't wear a mask. That's binary thinking. That's limiting to two. And what you want to do is look at the complexities within an issue. Hyperlinks give the author more credibility because the reader now has direct access to the source material for further evaluation. So that's one point of view. Hyperlinks distract from a more complex understanding of the source. That comes from the other article, Is Google Making Us Stupid? Is there a different option? Is to the only thing? Probably not. There's probably lots of different ways of including it. So you could include hyperlinks in the works cited page, which actually in MLA we do. So try to avoid this or that. I know we live in a world that seems to be either or right now. That's not good academics. We want you to have a complex understanding of an issue, and that means taking it apart and resisting the concept that either this or that are the only options. That's where we get stuck, and we want you to get past that level of thinking. Read to discover a writer's frame. So a writer's frame is the perspective through which they present their arguments. Gilliam and Wooden use Pixar movies to frame the argument on, quote, the new male model of masculinity. You can use another person's article to frame your own argument, much the way Gilliam and Wooden do in their third paragraph. So in other words, how do you want to frame your ideas? And then what articles are going to help you build that framework? Like you can say, these researchers have said this, and some researchers have said this. And those kinds of discussions, that synthesis of ideas, provides context or framing for your own research. Consider the constraints of the issue. So what gave rise to the issue? What is the context in which the argument is made? An argument made now about the coronavirus is going to be very different than an argument made in 20 years. So what is giving rise to the issue, and what's the context in which the argument is made? Timing makes a difference because there's not a lot of contemporary research yet because it's an ongoing process. One element of context that is important to consider is your audience. So an understanding of your audience helps you choose the depth of the discussion, the kinds of evidence that you present, and the language that you use. So for your final research paper, it's an academic essay, it's formal, and so you're writing complex, in-depth information about your topics, you're giving scholarly evidence, and you're using academic language with very limited personal pronoun use. In contrast, your topic exploration is more of a reflection, and you will be using personal pronouns like I. Another way to look at as you're developing your research is to ask questions. So what are you interested in writing about? Turn something that you're interested in learning into an issue-based question that should guide your inquiry into what others have written. As an example, I can remember the first time I was deployed when I was in the military. I knew I was going to be there for a while, and I took 9 library books on the Dead Sea Scrolls because I was interested in learning about the Dead Sea Scrolls. So then I can turn that interest into an issue-based question. And so I would start asking questions about the Dead Sea Scrolls to give a clear focus for what my research paper was going to look like, then developing an argument, so how something should be, why it should be this, should it be this way. Consider your audience, which is definitely academic and looking for complex analysis. Determine what resources you have. We're going to work on resources, but you need to get your resources really quick. This is a summer class. These assignments are snap, snap, snap. You're going constantly, so you don't have time to wait till the last minute for finding your sources. Through identifying what is at issue, you should begin to understand for whom it is an issue, right? I think that a lot of the protests that have been happening, I think as people really get more involved in studying or learning about it, they start to understand the issue and for whom it is an issue, right? And then also for whom you're answering the question. Like if you were trying to explain the phenomenon of the protests going on during a pandemic, it's important to think about who your audience is. If you're writing for an audience on that's about parenting, then you're writing in a very simplistic fashion. But if you're answering the question for academics, it's a much more complex and involved issue. In turn, the answer to your question should help craft your thesis. That's the whole point. We develop this question. The question guides our research until we have enough information to develop a thesis. Refine your topic. So a topic is the subject you want to write about, serial killers. Topics need refining into an issue that can be explored effectively. So first of all, if you're just writing about serial killers, that's probably an informative essay. But if you're arguing that female serial killers are less prevalent because of stereotypes about what a serial killer is, which is a white male of a certain age, now you have an argument that you can explore a little bit. Race is a broad issue. Stereotyping is a broad issue. But Adichie narrowed her focus to the ways in which stereotypes represented a limited viewpoint. She even looks a little bit at why that happens and then why that can be a dangerous topic. So you have a topic that's really broad, and then you have to narrow it down into what you want to talk about. The topic exploration is the first assignment in the research paper. The idea is to start to explore your interest and narrow your focus, just like I did in the previous slide. Put your ideas into a coherent argument about why you should write this particular topic for a class. In other words, you're not just saying, I'm really fascinated by serial killers. You're making an argument about why you should be allowed to write about serial killers. Part of identifying issues, we talked about this in the very first few slides, is where is the tension within your issue. We read an article sometimes in my class, we didn't this semester, by a lady named Tatum who asked, where do I see tension between races in school? And she ends up writing it about the school cafeteria. In fact, it's called Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together in the School Cafeteria? These ideas help focus your thoughts around a specific issue. which becomes your research question. So she asked, where's the tension between races in school? Once an issue is narrowed down, it's then your job to see what, if any, research is available around your topic. And that's key. You need to know by the time the topic exploration is due, you have to be certain that you have enough research available. That's one of the reasons it's really hard to write about something like the coronavirus, because there aren't a lot of research yet. There's a lot of data and there's a lot of discussion about the data, but we don't have good solid research because we don't even have a cure or a treatment that's effective universally. So make sure by the time you turn in your topic exploration, you know there's enough research to do this as your topic. And then you have to form an argumentative question. In other words, say I want to write about Habitat for Humanity. That's an informative essay. That's not research. If you can answer yes or no, it is probably not a substantive question. So, is Habitat for Humanity a good program? That's not an argumentative question because that can be answered with yes or no. In an argument, my question might be, to what extent can Habitat for Humanity's program coexist with easier social programs that simply provide housing without requiring personal investment? Now you have something you can argue. Acknowledge your audience. Your argumentative techniques, writing style, and sources are often audience dependent. Writing for a parenting magazine or for your own parents might be different than writing for academics. And remember, that's your audience this time, is an academic audience. Part of an argument, emotional appeal, asks us to discover what readers value so we can address that in our paper. Remember that from Comp 1. So for me, what I value is that you are fully exploring the information without letting your inherent bias skew your research. Your writing style is tailored to the language skills or expectations of the intended audience. That's why you write, this is formal academic paper. So I don't want hey, so this is what I'm talking about today, or hey, have you ever thought about this? This is not an informal paper. And the type of sources used varies between the type of audience. So this obviously has to be academic and scholarly because that is the audience. All right, so I'm going to give you a research paper or a worksheet here in a little bit, and you're going to start exploring your topic based on this worksheet, and I'll show it to you here in a few minutes. Once you've completed the worksheet, then you can begin to develop your issue based on the slides and the reading in the textbook, and I'm going to assign some reading for you guys. It's really short. It took me like 5 to 10 minutes. The interesting thing about the OER textbook, and I think somebody mentioned it earlier this semester, is it's not complex or very in-depth. So these two articles that I'm going to have you read don't take very long to read. And the end result is that you're going to write a 1 to 1.5 page explanation of your research topic exploration. And there are guidelines in the course content. All right, so let's look at the worksheets.